Silence swallowed the marble foyer like the closing of a tomb door. Clara Bennett stood trembling in a dress soaked through with November rain, her orthopedic shoes leaving wet prints on tile that cost more than her annual rent. The fever burning through her body registered at 102 degrees, climbing, relentless. Her small daughter Emma, 8 years old with dark eyes too aware for her age, pressed against her mother's hip so hard that Clara could feel the child's heartbeat matching her own panic. 15 feet away, Nicholas Corsetti sat in a leather chair the color of aged whiskey, his phone pressed to his ear. He spoke in rapid Italian, his voice like stone grinding against stone. The phone conversation lasted exactly 43 seconds. When he ended the call, the silence that followed was worse than any explosion. "My lieutenant says Douglas Hale has friends in the Chicago Police Department," Nicholas said, his words measured and precise as a blade finding its mark. 30 armed men are currently forming a perimeter around this building. They want you returned. Marco stood behind Nicholas, a man built like a monument with a scar running from his left eye to his jaw. His hand rested on his holstered weapon with the casual confidence of someone who had held guns more often than most people held coffee cups. Theo stood by the reinforced door, counting. His lips moved silently. 1, 2, 3. 28, 29, 30. Clara's knees buckled. She did not fall. Some combination of pure will and the small weight of her daughter against her side kept her upright. "We need shelter," she whispered. "Please." The word broke like glass in her throat. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked downtown Chicago, the November rain fell in sheets so heavy they obscured the street below. But the red laser sights cutting through that rain were impossible to miss. 30 dots of light, each one representing a weapon, each one representing the end of everything she had built toward. A bullhorn crackled to life outside. The sound distorted by rain and distance, but the words came through clear enough to stop her breathing. "This is the Chicago Police Department. Send out Clara Bennett and the child. You have 5 minutes before we breach the building." Emma whimpered. A sound so small it should have disappeared into the vastness of that room, but Nicholas Corsetti heard it. His grey eyes, dark as storm clouds and just as dangerous, shifted from the windows to the child for the first time. In 15 years, Marco had never seen his boss look at anyone the way he looked at this frightened 8-year-old girl. It was a look that suggested Nicholas Corsetti remembered something he had spent 6 years trying to forget. A nursery. A bassinet. A daughter he never got to hold because she arrived into this world silent and cold, her heart never beating even once. Nicholas stood. When he moved like a man made entirely of purpose. He walked toward Clara, and every tactical calculation in the room shifted. Marco's hand tightened on his weapon. Theo's counting accelerated. "Your name is Clara Bennett," Nicholas said. Not a question. A statement of fact delivered with the certainty of a man who knew things about her that she had never told him. "Yes," she managed. "You have been running for how long?" 8 years. "And the child?" "Emma. She is 8. She was born right before I left." Nicholas studied her with an intensity that felt like being examined under glass. Her wet dress hung from her thin frame like fabric draped over coat hangers. Her calloused hands trembled. The scars on her wrists, visible where her sleeves had ridden up, told a story he recognized because he had seen similar marks before, on women who had been owned by men who believed ownership was something that could be established through violence. "The fever," he said. "I have been working double shifts. Last night I fell in the rain. This morning I could not stand." Clara's voice dropped even lower. "My car broke down on the highway. If you had not stopped, I would have died out there. I would have died and Emma would have been alone." The bullhorn sounded again. 3 minutes remaining. "You came to me with nothing but a torn piece of paper," Nicholas said quietly. "Do you remember that?" She had been unconscious in the back seat of his black sedan when he pulled her out of the November downpour. But yes, she remembered the moment before unconsciousness took her. She remembered his driver finding the Northwestern University acceptance letter, dated 15 years prior, folded and refolded so many times the creases looked like scars across the paper. The letter bore a single handwritten note in faded blue ink: "I was going to be someone." "I remember," Clara said. "And do you know what I thought when I saw that letter?" She shook her head. Nicholas turned to face the windows, to face the 30 men and their weapons and the rain that fell like judgment. When he spoke, his voice was pitched low enough that only Clara and the child could hear it. "I thought that I had spent 6 years building an empire that could bring back the dead, and I had never once realized that empires are useless if they cannot protect the living. I thought that all of my money and all of my men and all of my power meant nothing, because I could not save the daughter I never got to meet." He paused. "And then I found you standing in the rain with nothing, fighting for the life of your daughter with a fierceness that would put generals to shame. And I realized that real power was not in how many men followed your orders. Real power was in deciding that someone else's daughter mattered as much as your own." He turned back to face her. "You are going to take your daughter and walk up the stairs to the 2nd floor. You are going to the room with the blue doors. You will lock yourself inside. You will not open that door for anyone except me or Marco. Do you understand?" Clara nodded, but she did not move. "What about you?" Emma asked. Her voice was so small, barely present in the room at all. Nicholas Corsetti, a man who controlled 17 criminal enterprises across Chicago and had not spoken a kind word to anyone in 6 years, knelt down so his eyes were level with the 8-year-old girl's. "I will be fine, Emma," he said. "I have men who follow me. Good men. And we are not going to let anything bad happen to you or your mother. That is a promise." Emma looked at her mother. Clara looked at Nicholas. Something passed between them in that moment, a recognition of two people who understood what it meant to be trapped by circumstances that seemed designed by fate itself to crush them. She took Emma's hand and walked toward the stairs. Footsteps echoed as she climbed, each step a small defiance against the chaos beginning to erupt below. Behind her, Marco and Theo moved into position with the efficiency of men who had rehearsed this exact scenario dozens of times. The bullhorn sounded one final time. Last warning. 30 seconds. But what Clara did not know, as she locked the blue doors behind her and held her daughter close while the sounds of tactical operations began to unfold in the world below, was that Nicholas Corsetti had just made a choice that would rewrite the next 7 years of both their lives. Now let us step back from this moment of perfect crisis and return to where everything truly began. 14 hours earlier. 3:22 in the morning. A place called Rosetti's Diner, where 2 crumpled dollar bills sat on a checkered counter and a woman's entire future hung by the thinnest of threads. The fluorescent lights hummed like dying insects. The coffee maker hissed steam into air thick with the smell of grease and burned eggs. Clara Bennett, 27 years old but looking closer to 40, smoothed out those $2 bills on the black and white checkered counter, her fingers moving with the precision of someone counting her last breath. $2. That was the total of tonight's tips. 17 customers over 9 hours. A man who ordered coffee and left nothing. A couple on a date who left 75 cents. A woman with 3 children who whispered an apology but had no cash at all, only a card that declined. $2. That was what the world decided her labor was worth. She had been a waitress at Rosetti's for 4 years. For years of double shifts and ankle-length dresses designed to make her invisible, of smiling until her face hurt, of swallowing words that might have changed her circumstances but also might have gotten her fired. The diner was empty now except for old Joe, the night manager, who counted the register in the back office with the focus of a man gambling with stolen money. Clara pulled out a small spiral notebook from her apron pocket and made an entry in handwriting so precise it looked like it belonged to someone who had once believed in their own future. Current savings, $578. Days until deadline, 10. Amount needed, $65,000. Amount currently held, $578. Difference, $64,422 short. She looked at that number the way a drowning person looks at a rescue boat that is far too far away to reach. Impossible. The number was impossible. But 10 days from now, Douglas Hale would know where she was. His sister had connections. His sister had money and lawyers and a way of making truths into lies and lies into truths. 10 days and Emma would be taken. Emma would be brought back to a man who had spent 8 years in prison and had come out of it no less dangerous than when he went in. Clara had $578 and she needed $65,000 and she had 10 days and she was running on the last threads of hope that had not yet completely unraveled. She folded the $2 bills into her apron and stepped out of Rosetti's diner into the November night. The rain started before she reached her car, a 2007 Honda Civic that should have been recycled into metal scraps 5 years ago but refused to die. She sat in the driver's seat and let her hands rest on the steering wheel while the rain intensified around her. Through the windshield, the city lights of Chicago blurred into watercolor paintings of a world that did not contain her. She thought about the Northwestern acceptance letter that she still carried, the one she had opened at 17 years old and believed meant her life would mean something. She thought about the man she had married at 19 because he had seemed kind. She thought about the first time he hit her. The second time he hit her. The 8th year of him hitting her, until she understood that her only choice was to take her daughter and run and never stop running. She thought about these things and started the car. The engine turned over, caught, settled into its familiar rattling idle. Clara pulled out of the empty parking lot and headed toward the highway that would take her home, to the small studio apartment on the south side where Emma slept under a blanket Clara had stolen from a hotel 2 years ago. She did not know, as she drove through the rain, that her car would break down within 40 minutes. She did not know that a black sedan would pull up behind her, that a man in a cashmere coat worth more than her yearly salary would step out into the rain without hesitation. She did not know that Nicholas Corsetti, a man who had not slept a full night in 6 years, had been awakened driving through the rain for reasons he did not fully understand himself, reasons that had something to do with ghosts and something to do with fate. She only knew that she was still trying, that her daughter was still sleeping safely at home, and that somewhere in the vast machinery of the universe, there had to be a way forward that did not end in destruction. The rain fell harder. Thunder rolled across the sky like a fist pounding on a locked door. Clara drove into the darkness, completely unaware that her entire life was about to change. The black and white checkered floor of Rosetti's diner stretched out like a chessboard at 3:22 in the morning, each tile reflecting the harsh white fluorescent lights overhead in a way that made the emptiness feel even more absolute. The neon sign in the window buzzed with a dying electrical hum, the red glow casting everything in a sickly pink wash. The smell of burnt coffee and grease hung in the stagnant air like a curse that could not be erased, a smell that had soaked into Clara Bennett's stained yellow apron so thoroughly that she sometimes wondered if she smelled like anything else anymore. She counted the tips with trembling fingers. 2 crumpled dollar bills. Worn soft from years of circulation, edges bent, one of them stained with something brown that might have been ketchup or might have been something worse. $2. That was what 4 hours of serving drunk men and tired truckers had earned her. $2 and a pinched nerve in her left shoulder from reaching across a booth to clear plates that had been left with exactly zero regard for the person cleaning them up. The orthopedic shoes on her feet, the only thing standing between her and complete collapse during these 12-hour shifts, ached in a way that made her wonder if pain could become something so constant it stopped being pain and became instead a kind of baseline. A normal. Just the way her body existed in the world now. Clara placed the 2 bills on the counter and smoothed them flat with the heel of her hand. She had written the number down on a piece of paper that morning, the way she did every morning. 10 days. 10 days left. She needed $65,000 to disappear from Chicago and start over with Emma in a place where Douglas Hale could never find them. Where he could never again put his hands on them. Where her 8-year-old daughter could sleep without flinching at sudden sounds. The math was brutal and simple and unchanging. She had $2. She needed $64,998 more. Tony, the manager, wiped down the counter with a cloth that had probably been white once, in some distant era before grease and coffee and the accumulated weight of night shift survival had turned it gray. He did not look at her when he passed her station. Tony never looked directly at anyone anymore. It was easier that way. Less involvement. Less chance of being asked to care about something that was not his problem. Double tomorrow? Clara asked. Her voice came out smaller than she intended, the kind of voice that had learned over 8 years of marriage to take up as little space as possible in the world. Tony nodded, still not meeting her eyes. We need coverage for the lunch rush. Someone called in sick. I'll be here, Clara said. She would be there. She would be here every day and every night that they would have her, until either she saved enough money or Douglas found her, whichever came first. Those were the only 2 endings she could see anymore. There was no third option. There was no rescue. There was only the relentless machinery of time and her own 2 hands and the absolute certainty that if she stopped moving forward for even 1 moment, everything would collapse. She reached into her jacket pocket and felt the edge of the paper there. The acceptance letter. Torn now, edges frayed from the hundreds of times she had removed it and put it back, removed it and put it back, the way some people touch worry stones or prayer beads. The Northwestern University seal was still visible in the corner, slightly faded. The date was from 8 years ago. 8 years. She had been 17 when that letter arrived, when the guidance counselor had called her into the office with tears in her eyes and said that Clara was brilliant, that Clara was going to do remarkable things, that the full scholarship meant she could get out, could become whoever she wanted to become. She had shown the letter to Douglas on their 3rd date. Douglas had read it carefully, slowly, and then he had kissed her forehead and said, "You'll never need this. You'll have me. You'll be fine." She had believed him. The memory burned now in a way that had nothing to do with heat and everything to do with the particular kind of pain that comes from understanding, years too late, that you have been erased. Not killed. Erased. There was a difference. A killed person at least left a body. A grave. Evidence that they had existed. An erased person simply became nothing, and the world moved forward without ever knowing what had been taken from it. She touched the lower curve of her spine, where the oldest scar lived. A raised line of tissue that had never quite flattened, no matter how many years passed. His belt buckle. She remembered the moment with the clarity of something that had happened 5 minutes ago instead of 5 years ago. She remembered how the buckle had caught the light from the television as he raised his arm. She remembered thinking that it was almost beautiful, the way light could bounce off metal. She remembered that thought had come right before the pain. There were other scars. 17 in total. She had counted them once, standing in the bathroom with the door locked, tracing each one with a shaking finger. 17 maps of his violence. 17 different moments when she had failed to say the right thing, wear the right clothes, clean the kitchen correctly, smile when he wanted her to smile. 17 different failures that had felt, in the moment, like they were entirely her fault. The diner phone rang. The sound cut through the low hum of the dying neon and the ambient noise of the kitchen like a blade through silence. It was late. 3 in the morning. Phone calls at 3 in the morning never brought good news. Clara watched Tony's face as he answered. Watched the color drain out of it like someone had pulled a plug and his skin had simply begun emptying itself of blood. "It's for you," Tony said. He held the phone out toward her, and his hand was shaking slightly. Or maybe her vision was shaking. She could not tell anymore which parts of the world were unstable and which parts were just her perception of it, which had been unreliable for 8 years now. Clara took the phone with fingers that felt like they belonged to someone else, someone at a great distance. The receiver was warm from Tony's hand. She brought it to her ear and heard nothing but heavy breathing on the other end. Breathing that was not quite normal. Breathing that came in gulps, like someone trying to control rage. "Hello?" Her voice was barely a whisper now, trembling like a candle in the wind. Douglas's voice came through like venom poured directly into her ear. "I know about the money you've been hiding, Clara. I know about the plan. You think you're clever, but you're not. You're stupid. You always have been. And now you're trying to steal my daughter from me. That is not going to happen." The words came fast, overlapping, the way they did when he had been drinking or when he was working himself up into something. Into the thing that came before the belt. Before his hands. Before she learned to make herself smaller, quieter, less present. I don't. I own you, Clara. I own you and I own Emma, and everything you think you have is mine. You can't run from me. You can't hide. I have friends. I have people who owe me favors. I know where you are every single moment of every single day. Click. The line went dead. Clara stood very still, holding the dead phone to her ear. Her heart was not racing. It was something slower and worse than racing. It was the feeling of a trap snapping shut. The feeling of running out of time. The feeling of understanding, with absolute clarity, that she had made a mistake. That whatever plan she had constructed, whatever fragile architecture of escape she had been building in the dark, it had been built on nothing but hope and prayer and the stubborn refusal to accept that some people do not let you go. She replaced the phone on its cradle with careful, deliberate movements. Each movement was controlled because if she let herself move naturally, if she let her panic take over her body, she would scream. And screaming would not help Emma. Screaming would only wake up the neighbors and draw attention and make everything worse. I have to go, Clara said to Tony. Her voice was steady now. Steady in the way that fear can make you steady, because panic is a luxury and she could not afford luxuries. She untied her apron and pulled it over her head. The movement exposed her shoulders for just a moment, the collar of her shirt pulling down just enough to show the edge of a bruise from 2 weeks ago, the color now faded to yellow-green. She pulled the shirt back up quickly. Tony did not react. Tony had learned not to see these things. They all had. Outside, the November rain had started to fall. Not drizzle. Not a light rain. A relentless, hammering rain that seemed to come from some deep and angry place in the sky, drops hitting the diner window like bullets, like the whole atmosphere was trying to break through glass. The parking lot was nearly empty. Her 1997 Honda Civic sat alone under a broken streetlight, the check engine light glowing red and steady like the eye of something watching her. She had to pick up Emma from her neighbor Mrs. Chen's apartment in 40 minutes. 40 minutes for her to drive across the city. 40 minutes for her to collect her daughter. 40 minutes for her to get home, pack what she could carry, and figure out what came next. But her car had been making sounds. Strange sounds. Grinding sounds. The kind of sounds that precede total failure. And now she had Douglas on her trail again, hunting her the way he had hunted her for the past 2 years since she had first fled, taken his child, crossed state lines, come back to Chicago only because she had family here and family was the only structure she understood anymore. Clara pulled out of the parking lot and headed toward the highway. The rain hammered against the windshield so hard she could barely see the road ahead. The wipers moved back and forth in their rhythm, back and forth, a sound like something breathing. She passed the darkened storefronts of the south side. Closed barber shops. Closed check cashing places. Closed laundromats. All of it closed. All of it dark. All of it waiting for the morning that would come whether she survived this night or not. The car shuddered. Just once. A single shudder that ran through the entire frame of the vehicle. Clara's hands tightened on the steering wheel. She pressed the accelerator slightly harder, coaxing the engine, the way you might speak to a sick animal you were trying to keep alive. 35 minutes to Mrs. Chen's apartment. 35 minutes until she could hold Emma's hand and know that her daughter was real and breathing and still alive, still safe, still hers. 35 minutes until everything changed again. The rain fell harder. Clara's eyes opened to unfamiliar ceiling. White, clean, untouched by water stains or cracks. She lay in a bed softer than anything she had ever felt, silk sheets cool against skin that remembered only cotton and warm polyester. The room was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed Chicago skyline etched against pre-dawn gray, buildings rising like monuments to every choice she had made wrong. Emma slept curled in an armchair beside the bed, wrapped in a blanket that probably cost more than Clara's monthly rent. Her daughter's breathing was steady. Safe. Real. Clara reached out to touch Emma's hair, her hand trembling with a fever that had broken sometime during the night. The door opened without knocking. Nicholas Corsetti entered carrying a tray, his movements economical and controlled even in the early morning. 6'3", shoulders built for bearing weight, dark hair silvered at the temples like a man who had aged forward decades in just a few years. The scar along his jawline caught the pale light like a fault line running through stone. His eyes were the grey of winter sky, empty, searching, dangerous. He was still wearing the suit from last night. The expensive fabric showed no wrinkles. "Your fever broke at 3:17, he said, setting the tray on the bedside table. His voice was deep and solid like an oath carved into granite. "My doctor treated you with antibiotics. You've been sleeping for 9 hours. The child wouldn't leave your side." Clara's throat burned. She reached for water with both hands because one hand wasn't steady enough. The glass was cool against her lips. The water tasted like something besides survival. "Where am I?" Her voice was barely a whisper, shattered like glass. "My home. My building, to be precise. 22 stories. You're on floor 18. He pulled the leather chair closer to the bed, each movement deliberate. "You collapsed. The fever was 102 degrees. Before that, you hadn't eaten in 2 days. Before that, you'd been working double shifts at Rosetti's diner for 14 consecutive days." Clara's stomach twisted. "How do you know?" "My people investigate thoroughly." He gestured to the tray. Soup in a ceramic bowl, bread still warm, 3 different bottles of medication, a glass of juice, and fruit sliced into careful pieces. "Eat. Then we talk about Douglas Hale." The name hit her like a fist. Clara's hand jerked and water sloshed across the silk sheets. Emma stirred in the chair but didn't wake. "How do you know that name?" Clara's voice dropped to nothing. "Did he find me? Is he here?" "Oh God, Emma, we have to." "He is not here." Nicholas's eyes held hers with the weight of something unbreakable. "You are safe. Your daughter is safe. But yes, Douglas Hale is looking for you. He has been looking for you since last night when your neighbor told him which direction your car was headed." Clara pushed back against the headboard, pain blooming across her spine like a map of every time he had hit her, every time his fists had written themselves into her body in the language of bruises. Mrs. Chen wouldn't, she wouldn't. Mrs. Chen is 84 years old and Douglas told her Emma was in danger. "He used your daughter's name." He cried. He was very convincing. Nicholas leaned back, fingers steepled. "My men arrived 40 minutes before he reached the highway." "Your men?" Clara's breath came shallow. You're not with him." The faintest shift crossed Nicholas's face, like a door closing and opening simultaneously. "I am not with him. I am the opposite of with him." He stood and moved to the window, his silhouette framed against the rising city. "Drink your juice. The fever is gone but your body is malnourished. Everything else waits until you eat." Clara wanted to refuse. Refusal was the only control she had left. But Emma slept for feet away and the juice tasted like possibility, so she drank it. The orange flavor filled her mouth like a memory of a life that had never existed. Nicholas didn't watch her. He watched the city waking up, the early commuters beginning their vertical crawl through the downtown streets. In 15 years of running a specific kind of business, I have seen many things. I have seen men betray brothers. I have seen women who claim abuse and women who invent it. But I have also seen patterns. And patterns tell stories. He turned back to face her. "Your pattern tells a particular story, Clara Bennett." The way he said her name, as if he had read it from a document, memorized it, branded it into his memory, made her throat close. "Last night when we found you on the highway, my lieutenant recognized something. The way you moved. The way you protected your daughter with your body even while you were barely conscious. That is not the behavior of someone seeking attention. He moved to the fruit plate, picked up a piece of orange, turned it slowly in his fingers. That is the behavior of someone who has spent years learning to disappear. Clara didn't answer. My men have been investigating Douglas Hale for 6 weeks, Nicholas continued. Not because of you. Because 6 weeks ago, a young woman called the Chicago Police Department 14 times. 14 times she requested help. 14 times the responding officers were the same too. 14 times, no report was filed. He showed her his phone. Security footage, pixelated but clear. A woman in the rain outside a police station late at night. The responding officers didn't even get out of their car. That was you, Nicholas said. Clara's hands began to shake. Not from fever this time. Officers Brennan and Kowalski, he continued, swiping to another image. Both close personal friends of Douglas Hale. Both recipients of significant cash payments disguised as poker winnings. Both protected by precinct command because Douglas's sister, Evelyn Blackwell, serves on the Chicago Police Foundation board. She donates $100,000 annually. She sits on 5 charity boards. She is, by all social measures, exactly what a philanthropist should be. He showed her another image. A woman in her late 40s, elegant in the way that only time and money can create elegance. Blonde hair perfectly cut. A smile that reached her eyes in the photograph but nowhere else. She called me a whore, Clara heard herself say. The word felt poisoned in her mouth. When Douglas and I when she found out we were together. She told me I should be grateful he paid attention to me. That I should understand my place. Nicholas's jaw tightened, muscle flexing against bone. Evelyn Blackwell is planning to go on television tomorrow morning. Channel 7's morning show. She has booked a segment on false accusations and how they destroy good men's lives. He showed her another screen. The booking confirmation. The segment description, the hidden cost of unsubstantiated claims. She will position herself as a sister defending her brother against lies. She will present documents. She will call character witnesses. She will make certain that any credibility you might gain is burned before you can even speak. The room tilted. Clara gripped the bedding. How do you know all of this? She whispered. Because it is my business to know things. Nicholas sat again. And because what happened to you is not unique. It is systematic. It is designed. It is a pattern that repeats until someone breaks it. Emma whimpered in her sleep. Not quite awake, not quite dreaming. Clara's entire body moved toward her daughter instinctively, pain forgotten. Nicholas watched this happen without comment. You said you needed $65,000, he said quietly. New identities. A fresh start far from here. You had $2 in your pocket when your car failed. Shame burned Clara's face red. That number is precise because you calculated it once and never allowed yourself to recalculate. 65,000 represented the mathematical distance between your life as it was and your life as it could be. He leaned forward slightly. Tell me why you chose that number. Because? Clara's voice fractured. Because that's what it costs. I called 3 agencies. 3 different places that help women disappear. The cheapest one is $47,000. But that one doesn't include counseling. The one that includes counseling is $65,000 for me and Emma both. The one that includes legal representation and help rebuilding credit is $78,000. But I can't save that much. I can't. She couldn't finish. You can't, Nicholas said, because you work double shifts at a diner where customers don't tip and your boss underpays you because he knows you cannot afford to leave. You cannot save money because survival requires everything you earn. Marco appeared in the doorway, his frame filling the space. Younger than Nicholas, maybe 40, face carved from something harder than flesh. Behind him came Theo, similar build, similar cold competence in the eyes. Boss, we have the files you requested, Marco said. On both of them. Bank statements, property holdings, offshore accounts. It's worse than expected. Nicholas stood without answering. He moved to the door with such quiet authority that Clara felt the room compress around him. The child should not hear what we need to discuss, he said to Clara. My housekeeper will move her to another bedroom before she wakes. She will be comfortable. She will be safe. He paused at the threshold. I will return in 2 hours with a proposal. Until then, eat. Sleep if you can. Do not attempt to leave. The building is secure, and I mean that in multiple ways. Then he was gone, the three men disappearing down a hallway that seemed to stretch into shadow. Clara sat alone in the enormous bed, in the expensive room, in the apartment of a stranger who seemed to know her more completely than anyone had ever known her. Outside the windows, Chicago continued its morning. People drove to jobs they hated. Children were dropped at schools. Somewhere across the city, Douglas was hunting. And somewhere in this building, in a room she hadn't yet seen, men in expensive suits were preparing to decide her fate. The rain from last night had stopped. The sky was clearing to pale blue, the kind of weather that made survival seem possible. The sirens cut through the building like a blade wrapped in ice. For 17 in the morning, and the world outside Corsetti Tower had transformed into something that belonged in a war zone. Red and blue lights strobed across the windows in a rhythm that matched Clara's heartbeat, frantic, trapped, accelerating toward something that could not be stopped. Marco appeared in the doorway, his broad frame suddenly rigid. His hand moved to the radio clipped at his collar. The expression on his face told Clara everything before his words did. Boss, we've got 30 men surrounding the building. Mixed group. CPD uniforms, private security, and I count at least 6 who aren't either. His voice was steady, professional, but his eyes had gone somewhere darker. Douglas just pulled up. Evelyn Blackwell is with him. Nicholas was already moving toward the windows. His suit, expensive charcoal wool tailored to his broad shoulders, seemed to tighten around him as his body tensed. He didn't rush. Every movement controlled. Every breath measured. The silence from him was more terrifying than any scream could have been. The bullhorn crackled to life below, and Clara felt her blood crystallize in her veins. This is Chicago Police Department. We have a warrant for child endangerment. Send out Clara Bennett and the child immediately. Do not attempt to resist. Clara stumbled backward. The floor seemed to shift beneath her orthopedic shoes. Child endangerment? Emma. Her voice broke like old glass. What are they saying? What is she telling them? Evelyn Blackwell stepped out of a black Mercedes, and even from 12 stories up, Clara could see the perfection of her appearance. Designer coat, hair arranged in waves that suggested a professional blow-dry for in the morning, makeup applied with the precision of someone who had been preparing for this moment. She held a microphone in one hand like a weapon she had spent months learning to use. The news camera crew was already rolling. Lights were already burning. This was not an arrest emerging from an investigation. This was a performance. Evelyn's voice rose clear and crystalline into the dawn air, and the reporter's microphone captured every word. We live outside a known criminal establishment where a deeply disturbed woman has taken her daughter after kidnapping her from legitimate family guardians. My brother Douglas Hale has been fighting through the courts for custody after Clara Bennett's documented mental health crises, her history of substance abuse, and her refusal to accept appropriate psychiatric treatment. Tonight, she has escalated to unlawful detention of a minor. Clara's hands pressed against the glass. The rain from last night had stopped, but moisture still clung to the windows, distorting the red and blue lights into bleeding colors. She's doing it now, Clara whispered. Not on some morning show. Live. Right now. So by the time anyone can prove it's a lie, the story is already set. Already spreading. Already becoming the truth. Emma slept on the sofa behind her, curled under a cashmere throw that probably cost more than Clara had earned in 3 months. Innocent. Unaware. Her small hand curled against her chest like a prayer. Marco's radio crackled. Officers on the street, reporting their positions. South entrance secured. North side in position. Rooftop team standing by. Clara turned to Nicholas. Her voice emerged as barely a whisper. They're coming for her. For Emma. And even if you could fight them off, which you can't fight the police. The story is already out there. Evelyn just made sure of that. Mental health crises. Substance abuse. I'm not a mother anymore. I'm a danger. And you're the criminal harboring me. She touched the scars on her back through her borrowed shirt. 8 years mapped in damaged tissue. The belt buckle that left a mark like a crescent moon. The fist that broke 2 ribs and they healed crooked. The boot that caught her hip and nearly shattered it. 8 years of survival that looked like a crime scene written on flesh. I can't win this, Clara said. Nicholas did not respond immediately. He stood at the window, watching Douglas pace below like a caged animal, watching Evelyn perform for the camera, watching the tactical positions forming with mathematical precision. The laser sights of 12 different weapons cut through the darkness below. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. Deep and solid like an oath. You're wrong about one thing, Clara. They can't fight me. I can fight them. And I already have. He pulled out his phone. 1 call. 3 words. It's time. Execute. The transformation happened in absolute silence first. Then the sound arrived like distant thunder. Black tactical vehicles emerged from 3 different streets simultaneously, blocking all access routes to the building. Federal agents materialized from the pre-dawn darkness in coordinated movement, 12 men in tactical gear with FBI letters blazoned across their chests. Douglas's head snapped up. His face went white. Not pale, white. The color of all blood draining toward a heart that had just realized its own danger. Agent Sarah Chen stepped forward, a woman maybe 50, with the bearing of someone who had spent 30 years making difficult men face consequences. She held a folder. Her voice cut through Evelyn's performance like a knife through paper. Douglas Hale, you are under arrest for interstate stalking, wire fraud, filing false police reports, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. You have the right to remain silent. Douglas's mouth opened and closed without words. What? No. I'm the victim here. She took my daughter. She's mentally unstable. We have 8 weeks of wiretaps on your phone, Agent Chen continued as if he hadn't spoken. Financial records showing you embezzled $45,000 from Morrison Industries to pay officers Brennan and Kowalski for their cooperation in this investigation. Those officers are also under arrest. Officer Brennan tried to step back. More FBI agents blocked him. His partner's hand dropped to his side, suddenly useless. Evelyn's perfectly composed mask fractured. She turned toward the news camera with the instinct of someone who believed in her own importance, who believed that exposure to television lights could shield her from accountability. This is a setup, she said. My brother is innocent. I have documentation proving. Agent Chen produced a tablet, turned it so the camera caught the screen with perfect timing. We have your emails, Ms. Blackwell. 18 months of coordinating false alibis, bribing witnesses, and paying a television producer $30,000 to ensure you could control the narrative on live television before the victim could speak for herself. The reporter's eyes widened. His cameraman was still rolling. This was not news anymore. This was happening. This was real. We're recording all of this, the reporter asked, almost to himself. Live feed, his cameraman confirmed. Going out right now. Evelyn's face transformed like a mask being torn away. The elegance crumbled. The designer coat suddenly looked absurd. Her voice became something sharp and ugly. You can't do this to me. Do you understand who I am? I sit on 4 charity boards. I'm personal friends with the mayor's wife. I'm friends with the mayor's office provided evidence to this investigation, Agent Chen said with the tone of someone swatting away an insect. Apparently he didn't appreciate you using his name to intimidate domestic violence victims into silence. Douglas broke then. His knee simply buckled, and the agents caught him before he fell completely. He hung between them like a puppet with its strings cut, shaking like a wounded animal. "Please," he sobbed. "Please, this is a misunderstanding. Clara, tell them. Tell them I never hurt you. Tell them I love you. Tell them." Clara stepped onto the balcony where the camera could see her. Where 12 stories of air separated her from the man who had tried to destroy her. She lifted her shirt just enough to show the bottom edge of the scars crossing her lower back. 3 of them, running in parallel lines like a roadmap of violence. The camera zoomed. The feed went viral in the way only live footage can, spreading before anyone could fact-check it, before anyone could deny it, before the lies had time to calcify into perceived truth. She didn't say a word. Didn't need to. 40 years minimum, Agent Cheng continued, her voice cutting through Douglas's sobs like a blade. Federal charges. Assault, witness intimidation, stalking. To Evelyn, your assets are frozen as of approximately 3 minutes ago. We raided your office at 6:15 this morning. We have your personal computer, your phone records, your bank statements. Evelyn's legs gave out. An FBI agent caught her before she fell. The news camera captured it all, the arrests, Clara on the balcony, the scars, the tears streaming down faces that had destroyed lives with casual cruelty. Nicholas appeared behind Clara on the balcony, not touching her but close enough that she felt his presence like a wall of solidity. Like shelter. Like the world had finally tilted back toward something resembling justice. Below, the morning was breaking grey and strange. The rain had stopped. The sky was beginning to clear. And the story that had been engineered to destroy a woman had become, instead, the instrument of her vindication. Behind them, in the apartment, Emma stirred in her sleep. Not waking. Not frightened. Just a child, sleeping peacefully, while the world outside learned the truth about the men and women who had tried to erase her mother from existence. Marco and Theo stood inside, watching through the interior glass. "One phone call," Marco said quietly. "Not death," Theo replied. "Death would be too quick. This is systematic destruction. Prison. Public humiliation. Financial ruin. Everything they valued, dismantled." The sun touched the horizon. For the first time in 8 years, Clara Bennett breathed without fear. 3 weeks later, Clara Bennett sits in a lawyer's office on the 42nd floor of a building that costs more to maintain in 1 month than she earned in 1 year. Soft lighting. Comfortable chairs. The kind of space designed to make broken people feel less broken. The attorney, a woman with silver-rimmed glasses and kind eyes, slides papers across the mahogany desk. The sound is quiet, deliberate, final. "The $65,000 is in your account," she says. "Mr. Corsetti was very specific. It's a gift, not a loan. No strings attached. You're free to go anywhere, become anyone, start whatever life you choose." Clara's hands shake holding the bank statement. The numbers blur through tears she didn't expect to cry. $65,000. 3 weeks ago, she had $2. 2 crumpled dollar bills that represented everything she owned in the world. Now this. She can disappear. Can start over. Can give Emma everything. Can finally breathe. The attorney continues, Douglas Hale was denied bail. Federal prosecutors are confident of conviction, 40 years minimum. Evelyn Blackwell's assets are frozen pending trial. Her charity boards have removed her name. The television station fired the producer she bribed. The story went viral. Over 15 million views in the first week alone. Clara absorbs this slowly. Justice. Real justice. Not the kind that ignored her 14 phone calls to the Chicago Police Department. Not the kind that filed her reports in a drawer and forgot about them. But the kind that dismantles lives with federal precision. The kind that freezes bank accounts and shatters social standing and turns predators into cautionary tales. Other women have come forward, the attorney says quietly. Similar stories. About Douglas. There were others, Clara. You weren't the first. But because you were brave enough to testify, to show your scars on national television, you might be the last. Clara nods but doesn't trust herself to speak. The room is so quiet she can hear the air conditioning humming, the distant sound of Chicago traffic 42 stories below. That night, Nicholas invites her and Emma to dinner at his home. Not the safe house, his actual residence. A brownstone in Lincoln Park with tall windows and a garden where Emma explores while the adults talk inside. Emma finds a flower, holds it like it's made of light. "Mama, look," she shouts, her voice carrying the particular joy of a child discovering beauty. Clara watches her daughter run through the garden without fear, without flinching at shadows, and something shifts in her chest. Something that feels like healing beginning. In his library, rain patters against windows. November hasn't loosened its grip on Chicago yet. The city outside is gray and cold and indifferent, but in here, beside the fireplace with its crackling warmth, Clara and Nicholas sit in leather chairs that have held powerful men for decades. "Why did you help me?" Clara asks. The question she's been afraid to ask since the night he found her on the highway. Nicholas is quiet for a very long time. His fingers steeple together, and when he speaks, his voice fractures like old glass. 6 years ago, my daughter was stillborn. Sophia. I held her for exactly 3 hours and 27 minutes before they made me let go. I counted every second. I thought if I counted long enough, if I was present enough, if I loved her hard enough, her heart would start beating. He stops. Breathes. I couldn't save her. Couldn't breathe life into her lungs. Couldn't make her heart beat. The nursery is still upstairs. Unopened. I've never dismantled it. Never said her name out loud to anyone until right now. Clara's throat tightens. She understands loss. She understands the weight of a child who needs you and a world that conspires against them. I'm sorry, she whispers. When I saw you in the rain, Nicholas continues, holding your daughter close, fever burning through you, but still standing, still fighting, I saw what I couldn't be. A parent who doesn't give up. Who saves their child against impossible odds. He turns to look at her fully, and his eyes are wet. You saved Emma that night. And somehow, watching you do it saved something in me too. Something I thought was permanently broken. Clara reaches across the space between them, takes his hand. His palm is warm, calloused, real. You saved us, she says. You gave us a future. Nicholas's fingers close around hers. No. We saved each other. You on the worst night of your life, me on another sleepless night in 6 years of them. We're bound by shared darkness, Clara. But maybe we can find light too. Emma runs in then, flower still clutched in her small fist, and climbs into the space between them on the chair. Clara pulls her daughter close, meets Nicholas's gaze over Emma's head. For the first time in 8 years, she's not counting dollars or calculating escape routes. She's not memorizing highways or planning disappearance. She's just here, in this moment, safe. The three of them sit together while the rain falls outside and the fire crackles and the city moves on, indifferent to the small, profound healing happening in this room. 6 months later, Clara Bennett stands in front of Northwestern University, the acceptance letter in her hand. This one isn't torn. This one isn't wrinkled from being carried in a jacket pocket as a reminder of what she lost. This letter is new, crisp, dated this semester. She's enrolled. Full scholarship. Starting the life she should have had 8 years ago if the world had been kinder, if men like Douglas Hale didn't exist, if systems designed to protect women actually did. Emma attends a private school nearby, thriving, laughing, her voice carrying the particular lightness of a child who no longer carries fear. The scars on Clara's back haven't disappeared. They remain as they always were, evidence of survival, not shame. Maps of what she endured, proof that she lived through the darkness and came out the other side. Nicholas Corsetti appears beside her on campus, carrying coffee for them both. 2 cups, steam rising into the cold morning air. They're not rushing into anything, both too damaged, too careful, too aware that trust is built in small moments, not grand gestures. But they're building something real. Friendship. Trust. The possibility of more. The kind of love that doesn't save you because it understands that you save yourself. It simply walks beside you while you do it. Ready? He asks. Clara looks at the building where her first class starts in 10 minutes. At the students walking through the doors, most of them younger than her, none of them carrying the weight she carries. None of them having fought her battles. I'm terrified, she admits. Good, Nicholas says. That means it matters. She smiles, takes the coffee from his hands, heads toward her future. Nicholas watches her go, and for the first time in 6 years, he slept through the night last night. For full hours. Just for hours, but they felt like a miracle. It's a start. Clara Bennett counted $2 on a diner counter and thought her story was over. But sometimes the end is just the beginning. Sometimes the darkness we survive becomes the foundation for the light we build. Douglas Hale is serving 40 years in federal prison. Evelyn Blackwell's trial resulted in 18 years and complete financial ruin. Every charity board removed her name. Every social connection severed. The viral video of Clara's scars has been viewed over 30 million times and sparked a national conversation about police failures in domestic violence cases. Women from Chicago to California came forward with their own stories, their own scars, their own battles against systems that failed them. But Clara doesn't watch those videos. She's too busy building the life she deserves. With a daughter who feels safe. A degree she's earning. And a man who understands that healing isn't linear. It's choosing, every single day, to trust again. Every day we choose between fear and trust, between closing ourselves off and opening our hearts. That's the choice Clara made. That's the choice Nicholas made. And if you're watching this, it's the choice you face too. If this story moved you, it's because you understand that strength isn't never falling. It's getting back up. Hit that like button. Share this with someone fighting their own darkness. Subscribe because tomorrow we are bringing you another story of survival, justice, and the unexpected places we find hope. Drop a comment telling us, what would you do with a second chance? We'll see you in the next one. Thank you for staying until the very end. Goodbye, and we will see you again in the next video.